Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1583A, and today's date is June 4th, 2018, and the title of the episode is, It Has Begun, It's Accelerating, It's Just a Matter of Time. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I uploaded an interview with Wolf Richter. It is on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So all you need to do is go over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight. It will bring you to that interview, or you can come over to the x22report.com or newsentinel.com site. Scroll down a little bit, look over to the right-hand side. You'll see the interview there. You can play it right on the site, or you can go to Steemit, that is steemit.com/@x22report, and you can play the interview on Steemit. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been talking about housing bubbles, and we've been talking about them in Canada, the United States, and Australia is also having their housing bubbles, and they're starting to deflate. They're starting to pop. And in Sydney, we're seeing that home prices, they jumped over 80% from the end of 2009 through the peak in September last year, after dipping a little bit during the global financial crisis, and they dipped around 4.6%. And Australia is one of the hottest housing bubbles in the world right now. And this price boom, well, it looks like it's run its course. According to CoreLogic Daily Home Value Index, home prices fell around 4.2% by the end of May compared to a year ago, with house prices down around 5.9% and prices of condos down 0.4%. In the 8 months since the peak in September, the index has fallen around 4.7%. And you can see this in Sydney, you can see this in Melbourne, and you can see that housing prices, they are falling right now. And in the 5 capital cities, we see that home prices have dropped 1.1% from a year ago. This is the first annual decline since October 2012, and this is according to CoreLogic. The index has now declined month to month for 8 months in a row, for a total of 2.2% from the peak in September of last year. And we see that this is spreading throughout Australia. It's happening in Canada, it's happening in the United States, it's happening out in Europe, and this is just going to get worse and worse as time goes on. It's not going to improve, it's not going to get better, because the bubbles have been pumped up, and now everything is coming down. The entire economic system is based on a central bank illusion. Of course, the government is included in creating this illusion, where they manipulate all the calculations, but this is done on purpose every single time to bring everyone into the economy, actually to bring everyone into housing, to bring everyone into the stock market, to bring everyone into the places where they can pull the rug from under them, and the whole thing collapses and people lose everything, and they can purchase all these things for pennies on the dollar. This is what they've done in the past, and they made themselves very, very wealthy. This is the central banking system. This is not a people system. They've convinced us through brainwashing over time that debt is good. If people put more on their credit card, it's good. If you take a loan out to get a car, that's good. If you take out a huge mortgage, that's good to buy a house. They've been convincing us of all of this for a very long time, and now it is falling apart. And we're starting to see the economic structure around the world. Well, it's deteriorating very, very quickly, and they don't know how to stop it. They've stopped it in 2008 by creating a lot of currency, but now it's completely and just falling apart. We see out in New Jersey, looks like the governor there, Phil Murphy, and his administration, they have a lot of problems in New Jersey, and it looks like things are completely imploding in New Jersey. Now, the state right now is pretty much broke. They don't have the funds to keep everything afloat, and they're trying to cut corners here and there. What's very interesting about all this with their state pensions is that they just hiked its expected return from 7% to 7.5%. Now, remember, this is based on the interest rate, and we know the interest rates, they're at the lowest point we've seen in a very, very long time. They're nowhere near that type of return. So what they're using is the stock market. If the stock market collapses, guess what? Pensions, they implode on themselves, and that's the end of that. And most of the pensions are based on a stock market return. And when everything goes south, it's really going to be a complete and utter disaster across the country. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, if the economy is so great, why are 78 million Americans hustling around for extra cash? Because the unemployment, as we've been told, is at 3.8%. And if it's so great, why do people need extra jobs? Why do they have 2-3 part-time jobs? So when we look at this, we have to say, what's going on here? Now remember, the everyday normal job that's dictated to us is 9 to 5. The people that have jobs, they're not working 9 to 5 anymore. They're working 4 hours in this job, 3 hours in this job. They might have another side job. And this is what they've been doing for a very long time to make ends meet. They've been trying to sell things on the side to make ends meet. And they've been selling, people out there have been selling whatever they possibly can. And when you look at this, the most popular side hustles are selling goods online, like Craigslist, eBay, house cleaning, yard work, babysitting. And these are people with jobs. Now, what has happened is everyone who had these high-paying jobs lost the high-paying jobs. They might have gotten another job, but it was for a lower salary, or they couldn't find that job in the same field, and they had to take a part-time job. Now, they couldn't live on the one part-time job, so they had to bring in extra income, just enough to survive. This doesn't mean they have extra money. This means they're just making it every single day with what's coming in. And we see from what's called a Federal Reserve survey, and this is the survey of household economics and decision-making, well, it delves into how people feel about their economic lives and why they make decisions they do. Now, the SHED, that's the abbreviation, found that about 31% of adults participate in what the Fed called the gig economy, work done outside of regular employment structures to make ends meet. And about 78 million people are doing this. Actually, it might even be a lot larger than this, because the jobs they have today, they're just not making enough. Remember, the Fed doesn't see inflation. They're saying that there is no inflation. We haven't even hit the inflation mark. But if you look at housing, if you look at automobiles, if you look at college tuition, if you look at the prices of food, if you look at pretty much almost everything that you need today, rents, all of that has been inflated. Salaries, non-existent. We've talked about this in other reports where people haven't received the cost of living in a very long time. They haven't gotten raises. And right now, we see that this full employment is kind of meaningless because we know how they calculate this. You know, these 1, 2, 3 part-time jobs is 1, 2, 3, 4 full-time jobs. They're basically manipulating everything, making us believe that everything is great. This is what they did prior to 2008 when we had that collapse of the entire system. They told us everything was great. Real estate, fine. Subprime securities, A-OK, contained. They're AAA rated, nothing to worry about. But guess what? It was a lie. The same thing is happening right now. It is a lie. We see factory orders. They have slumped right now. They're flip-flopping up and down. And basically what's happening, they manipulate the numbers. They don't manipulate the numbers. They fall. They have to manipulate them again, revise the numbers. And they keep doing this over and over and over. Because the system, when it's based on fake data, you have to continually do this. And this is why the numbers look the way they look. The economy is not doing well. And this is what the Patriots are trying to do. They're trying to take the narrative and control it for the next downturn of the economy. We know that Trump right now, with others in his administration, they're pushing tariffs on many different countries and many different sectors. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring the system down and control the narrative of what is happening right now. Control it away from the central banking system, because they don't want the central banking system to restart our system. They want to restart it as a people system. And what's very interesting is Goldman Sachs was out there, and they said something very, very interesting. They said that in order for these tariffs to work, the market has to crash first. Now that is very interesting, where the stocks they're going to have to come tumbling down. Now, Trump did mention a while back that stocks may take a hit and people are going to feel the pain in the market. We know what's coming. We know the market's going to come down. We know the stock market is based on fake information. It's an illusion. They can pump it up with a push of a button. No problem. And the reason why they need to bring this entire system down right now is because there is a major move to move away from the dollar. Now, we talked about China. We talked about Russia. We talked about Iran. We talked about India. What about Africa? Now, if you notice, it's all the small emerging economies being shifted away. And eventually what will happen is the larger economies will eventually shift away from the dollar. But what's happening right now is that in Africa, we see that the African countries, they were having a summit, and they're calling for yuanification. The reason why they're wanting to move to the yuan is because they're saying that most of their business in Africa is with China, not the United States. And there's no reason to use the dollar. Now, you're probably saying, well, what is this, like 1 or 2 countries? No, this is 14 countries where they're saying there's no reason whatsoever to use the dollar. We might as well use the yuan. Now, this is what they said. One of the issues we discussed, though, was that sometimes if you have borrowed from China, they want to bill you in US dollars. Now we are saying our government must start discussing with Chinese enterprises and government so that we're billed in yuan and then we can pay in yuan, because there's no point if we start keeping our reserves in yuan but we're billed in dollars. It is no good. And this is coming from the African nations during the summit. They're saying there's no reason to use the dollar in any of the transactions. We might as well go right to the yuan. So if we put all of this together, we see that Syria is going to be looking to have business outside of the dollar. Iran, we already know they're going to deal with Europe in the euro or whatever currency they want to use. We know that Iran is dealing with China in any other currency except the dollar. We know that Russia is dealing with any other currency except the dollar. We know that other countries like India, we mentioned before, Turkey, now Africa, Venezuela. As you can see, it's starting to accelerate right now. And this is going to move a lot faster. And we need to remember, nothing lasts forever. If we go back in time and we look at the reserve currency status in the past, hundreds of years, we see if we go back in time in the 1400s, it was Portugal. In the 1500s, it was Spain. Then it was the Netherlands, then France, then Britain. Here we are at the US. Guess what? Time is up. Now the next country is going to get the reserve currency. And we can see that this is being moved towards China, the yuan. I mean, we've been saying this for quite a while. Now, they might try to put this into the basket of SDRs, where the IMF can control it. This is the central bank's plan. And I think other nations, eventually, even China, I think they have a different plan in store. I think they're going to try to move away from the central banking system when everything is said and done. So there's going to be a huge battle going on right now between the central banks and the countries, and we're going to have to see where we go. And whoever controls the narrative, well, that's where we're going. And you can see this is why there's a huge battle with the United States, China. It's not United States against China. Both of these countries are actually working together to go against the central banking system. And we're going to see that all of this is going to be a battle all the way up to the end, and whoever controls the narrative. And if we go back to 1971, who controlled the narrative back then? It was the central bankers. It was the deep state with the central bankers who told us there was a shortage of oil. That's why we couldn't get the gas. They were speculators in the market. This is why we had to close the gold window. This is why we couldn't allow countries to get their gold back. This wasn't the reason at all. They were moving everything off of the gold standard, putting us on to their new system called the petrodollar. But no one really knew about this back then. So they made up this entire story of why all of this was happening. And they kept that story going until today. And now, if the central banks have their way, they're going to make up another story. That's what I mean by controlling the narrative. If the patriots control the narrative, guess what? We're going to see an audit of the central banking system. The central banking system is going to be pushed out. That doesn't mean they're just going to go away. They're going to fight back any way they possibly can. Central banks have caused wars throughout history to keep their system alive. So here we are today, and we can see countries, they're starting to realize what is going on, and they're moving away from the dollar. This is accelerating, and it's just a matter of time before the United States is no longer the reserve currency, and everything will then change. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.